Life's too short to drive boring cars. I will never buy another BMW. I'm no different than most of you. I also admired BMWs from afar. I was mesmerized by their styling, their design, their performance. Where else could you get European design and performance? And you could mate that up with a manual transmission, and you had a car that handled like it was on rails. We can't forget about the quality that you found that every car was immersed in. The design, the plastics, the leathers, the smell of the interior, the silky, buttery smooth transmission, and the fact that most of the cars in the day were rear-wheel drive. Every time you'd see a BMW drive by, you were excited. Your heart started to pound, fluttered, almost like that first date that you went out in grade 7. It's just the sort of car that lit up your day. You wanted to go down to the dealership and gawk for hours at that new BMW M3 in the showroom. It excited, it dazzled, it took your breath away. Many years have gone by. I've personally owned many BMWs. I too was dazzled from tip to tail by the BMW brand. I loved everything about the brand. I became immersed in BMW as a whole. Over the years, I purchased 5 different BMWs. But my first experience came with an E30 325i, and a friend of mine had that car, and it was a manual gearbox. And that car was exceptionally fun to drive. Small, sporty, compact, quality were all terms that you could use when explaining that BMW. It was a simple car from a simple time that catered to people that enjoyed the driving experience. Clearly times have changed. Now, the brand is far more focused on selling to a much broader audience. They no longer care about the reputation that they deserved back in the day about being the ultimate driving machine, and that's why I will never buy another BMW. After my experience in my friend's 325 E30 variation, I couldn't help but move to the next car. It seemed to make sense, the E36. I bought an E36 and it was a 318 Ti, and I didn't have a lot of money and the budget was limited, so that's all I could afford at the time. But we love that car. We love the quality. We love the texturing of the plastics. We love the style. We love the updated rockers. From the E30, it felt like the next step in the right direction. We owned that car for a few short years, and then it seemed like it's time to step up to the full-size car. We wound up buying an E36 320i, and that had a 2-liter straight 6. Silky smooth. Now the only thing missing there was it had an automatic transmission, because my wife felt like that was the way to go. She didn't know how to drive a standard at the time, and we bought the automatic. It often led us longing for the next best car. So then we started to search around, and we started looking at some of the M cars, and all I could see was this beautiful hot rod. I looked at the E46 M3 it came out, and it just pumped me with heart palpitations. I couldn't get close enough to those cars. I had a brief experience driving one on a test drive, and I instantly fell in love with the brand even further than I originally was, if you can believe that. But I never did generate the income to buy one at the time. And then came along the E90 generation of M3. I truly was floored by the new design. It seemed like leagues ahead in terms of design and fit and finish, and I just had to have it. But then at that point, income started to rise. I decided, you know what? Maybe I'll look at the M5. I saw that first video. Jeremy Clarkson did a great number. He talked for 10 minutes about how horrible the E60 M5 was. The signals didn't work well, the gearbox was lurchy, and it was annoying at best and disgusting at least. And immediately upon hitting the M button, the active bolsters came alive. The heads-up display flashed in the face, and the revs wound out to 8,500 RPM, showing everybody, including a Ferrari F430, its taillights. It immediately resonated with me, the car that I needed to have, with over 500 horsepower and a sound as good as anything coming out from Maranello or even the Lamborghini brands. It just seemed like the car I needed to buy. A few short years went by, and I bought one. I loved it. The car was amazing, and I still own that car today. Then we decided to buy the car behind us here, and it's an E70 X5, because we were in the midst of our love affair with BMW as a whole. Love affair it is. Things have changed since then, and as a result, I will never buy another BMW. We've driven this E70 for many years, and for the first 5 or 6 years, it was almost virtually flawless, other than oil changes, brakes, and tires. But the car was virtually bulletproof. We took it on many family trips to California and Phoenix, and it became part of the family. So not only did we have a passion for the brand, it became part of the group, part of the family, and we were all immersed in this wonderful experience known as BMW. Then years went by and we started to experience more failures. We had problems from the rear air suspension, the rear airbags start to leak air, caused us hundreds of dollars of repairs. Then we had glow plug repairs. And then we had the diesel exhaust fluid tank fixes, and fortunately the first one was under an extended warranty and it didn't cost us a dime. Several years go by, I buy myself a 335i with the N54 powered twin turbo setup. My love affair continued with that car. I loved it. 6-speed manual gearbox, rear wheel drive. It was true to the BMW passion. It had everything. The performance, the looks, the style. It still had the angel eyes and was true in every sense to the BMW brand. The quality of the interior was as good as I remembered of anything in the past. It had wonderful wood trim, accented by brushed aluminum, and a high quality leather that wore very well. But then I felt myself underwater with repair upon repair, from coolant leaks from the water pump, overheating, thermostat problems, oil leaks from the oil filter housing gaskets, boost leaks because of the intake manifold O-rings. I had the infamous death wastegate rattle noises. And I literally found myself under the hood of that car weekly fixing a leak, a failure, an engine code. I literally thought I would wear out the hood release lever. And at that point in my mind, I said to myself, I will never buy another BMW. So I finally got my grip on the repairs. I spent many weeks fixing that car, only to be able to sell that as quickly as I physically could. It was too much trouble than it was worth. And so there's always that line in the sand where you have to ask yourself, is it way too much hassle? I mean, because ultimately I truly live to the motto, life's too short to drive boring cars. And there's a balance of repairs and maintenance that you can tolerate. But if you cross that line, and you'll know where that line is, the line is different for everyone. And for me, I grossly crossed that line with that car. I couldn't go for more than a week without a problem. And so it was time to sell the car. The 335 went, I put 20,000 kilometers on it, owned it for a year, and I had to make it disappear. Then the E60 M5 started sprouting problems. We had the death cog light pop up. We had as well limp mode was activated on a couple of occasions due to the throttle actuators. It quickly reminded us that BMWs can be quite fragile. And it also reminded me why I will never buy another BMW. But the E60 M5 is a different animal. And I truly believe that that balances enough of the fun and frivolity that keeps it above the line of trying to sell it. So at this time, and this place in history of my personal experience with BMWs, I may not sell that car at this time. But now we've experienced some recent problems with the E70 X5. And the problems are deep, and the problems are abound. And this is where the beginning of the heartache starts. And so my love affair for the brand quickly transitioned to a situation that I can only quantify as being tickled. Have you ever been tickled? It was giggly, it was funny, but it was borderline annoying. Well, that giggling and that annoying transitioned to one of those tickles that became painful. And that was the only way I can quantify my recent experience with BMW. And not only has the love affair gone away, but we quickly transitioned to a painful tickle and an utter dislike, distraught, and almost disgust with the brand. And so anyone who knows the E70 X5 has probably had experience with the infamous diesel exhaust fluid tank failures. Now, while BMW had quickly diagnosed this as a problem, they extended the warranty for owners up to 10 years and 200,000 kilometers, or approximately 120,000 miles. And I had one of those fixed under the extended warranty. And I felt like, wow, I dodged a bullet. But a few years after that, warranty had passed, and I just recently experienced the same problem again. Why, oh why, does BMW not get this right? This time, the diesel exhaust fluid tank cost me $3,800 parts and labor to get fixed at the dealer. Clearly there's a deficiency in these parts. Clearly this is an issue. And clearly somebody's not taking accountability or ownership for the low-grade parts that is tucked under the hood of that BMW. Now, not every part is low quality. There are many parts in a BMW that wear very well. The body panels, for example, they resist rust very well, and those are some of the reasons why I maintain my attitude, or my positive attitude, over the BMW brand over many years. And there's also other parts that I've experienced that have held up very well. Cosmetics, seats, leather. Many of the parts do very well for themselves, thank you very much. Starters, transmissions, core engine components often are very durable in a lot of the BMWs. They have had a few bad misses. The BMW N20, for example, the Turbo 4, ripping up timing chains. That's a problem on the customer's dime. The N63, that's that twin-turbo 4.4-liter engine, eats up timing chains too. Oil consumption, yeah, it guzzles oil like it's going out of style. That's very disappointing, because a few years ago I was looking at one of those 550i GTs, and it had that N63. And I always thought to myself, why is this car going for such a great deal? I test drove it. It was wonderful. It had good power. It was luxurious. And I just could not get my head wrapped around why the used vehicle was so affordably priced, until a few years later I learned why that was. And that's primarily because that N63 had lawyers chasing it because customers were getting taken for a ride, literally. That N63 was costing customers massive amounts of dollars. Putting 1, 2, 3, or even more quarts of oil between oil changes is literally unacceptable. Timing chain failures, battery failures. It just wasn't acceptable for a brand of this magnitude. And so I quickly started to learn that these cars weren't as flawless as I once thought they were. And that, coupled with the problems that we're hearing about rod bearings and the M3s, the rod bearings and the throttle actuators that we're finding in the E60 M5s, now the problems I'm seeing here are all adding up, and they're all starting to make a lot of sense, which is why I'll never buy another BMW. When people pay the kind of money they do for the parts that are under the hood here, for example, the diesel exhaust fluid tank, they expect something to last. And they expect it to last a long time. If I'm paying over $3,000 for a diesel exhaust fluid tank that's required by emission standards, then there should be more tied to that. There should be more accountability tied to that, and the brand should take ownership for the lifetime of that vehicle for emission-related parts. No different than in some jurisdictions, for example, California, where you have to get annual inspections on your vehicle to make sure that they adhere to environmental standards. That part should be governed by the government, just as the inspections are, to make sure that you maintain that vehicle in accordance to these standards. But BMW is leaving you out in a lurch. That diesel exhaust fluid tank should never be paid for on my dime. Why should I have to pay for something that's regulated by the government? And BMW builds substandard parts that are guaranteed to leave you in a lurch and are guaranteed to drain your wallet. And if I decide to remove those parts, that vehicle is no longer compliant and is technically no longer legal on the street. BMW has you by the curlies. This is why I will never buy another BMW. Then recently I've had some other failures. I had a fuel injector failure here on this car. And that happens. Any vehicle can experience a fuel injector failure or a fuel pump. Those aren't out of the realm of possibility. But what is the problem is, I take my vehicle in. When I had that diagnosis of the diesel exhaust fluid tank, it also started to exhibit some running failures. The vehicle failed to start one time, and then it also stalled on another time. So when I took the vehicle into the dealer to troubleshoot a couple of things, the diesel exhaust fluid issue, but the running issues too, they did not diagnose a running issue. When the vehicle was in at the shop getting repaired for the DEF tank upgrade, all of a sudden it started exhibiting problems. I already had to pay $200 for a diagnostic charge, which was quite clear and easy to diagnose with a quick plug-in of the computer's program that they run and then ISTA software, they knew right away what the problem was in 10 minutes, but yet they charged me $200, which is why I will never buy another BMW. Then once they found that there was actually operating and running conditions with the vehicle, they reached out to me and they said, well, we fixed your diesel exhaust fluid tank issues, but now you have this other problem. And I said, I knew that was a problem and I told you that. But then they extended the offering and said, we're going to need 2 more hours minimum for further diagnostics. And I said, I already paid you $200 for diagnostic to troubleshoot some of the issues I was having. But they said, we will not do anything further until you commit and allow us to charge you another 2 hours labor and to the equivalent of another $400 of diagnostics to troubleshoot a running condition, which again was easily diagnosed by the quick plug-in. Quickly I felt like I was getting greased, and after paying $600 in diagnostic fees, I found out that I had a bad fuel injector. And it was this very feeling of getting greased that I realized I will never buy another BMW. Now that's not the end of the story. The problem was, we knew that the injector was bad, but they couldn't guarantee that that was the entire fix. I already knew I was $6,000 in because of the $2,000 for the injector and labor, plus the $3,800 for the diesel exhaust fluid tank that we knew was a deficient part from the get-go. But at $6,000 in, I felt myself quickly getting buried by quicksand all around me, and I felt like there was no way out, which quickly escalated my feeling of the love affair for the brand to sheer hatred and resentment for what I now knew is the BMW brand. Because the dealer now told me that could not guarantee that the DDE wasn't faulty. And the DDE is actually the module which fires the injectors. And the story doesn't end there, because the DDE itself is another $2,600 for the part, plus labor associated to install and program. That quickly could run up the bill to $10,000 for a 2009 BMW X5 that is only worth $10,000. I was now underwater on the price of this vehicle, and I quickly knew I had to get out of Dodge, and I had to get it out quickly. I was scrambling. I was stressed. Because where does it end? That was one injector. When you read the forums, I quickly found that often when one of the back injectors for 4, 5, or 6 fails, quite frequently the other 2 injectors on that back end of the engine fail shortly thereafter. And at this point I realized I would never buy another BMW. Now unfortunately the falling out of my love for BMW doesn't just end with the repairs. Because we fixed the car, it wasn't a board issue, and we moved on with the world, and of course it's parked right behind me now. But the brand has made some big changes in recent history, which I don't find all that exciting. They virtually all but eliminated the manual transmission, other than with the exception of the odd M3. You're no longer able to get a manual transmission. Now I understand the market drives this change. Clearly there's not a big ask for manual transmissions in mainstream cars. For example, an M340i would be just a delight to drive with a manual transmission. But I can't get one. And that's to me what driving a BMW was all about. And that was a big part of why I wanted to drive a BMW in the first place. They've eliminated that. On top of that, some of the styling is no longer exciting. Not only is it not exciting, but they've downright destroyed some of the designs. These new oversized grills, in my opinion, have just shattered the design and the design theme of the car as a whole. And it is not a great look, in my opinion. Now, everybody's got their own thoughts, and that's a very subjective discussion. But the very look of the car no longer excites like it did back in the E92 generation of the M3. And that's why I'll never drive another BMW. But the fact of the matter is, their primary focus seems to be on developing SUVs. You have cars from X1s, X2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s. So clearly the brand has transitioned from a place of a sporting driving experience to one like this, where it becomes more of a family hauler. Now that's where the market trends are going, and every brand, including Lamborghini, Porsche, Maserati, have all moved down that road. But it's the very business model of ripping off customers and overcharging on elements like diagnostic fees that are often quite simple, that are some of the things that have literally turned me off of the brand. And at this point, I have truly lost my love affair, and I will never buy another BMW again. Unless something drastically changes and there's a new level of energization within the company that relights my fire for the brand. And with all of that said, everyone, I really hope you enjoyed that. Definitely going to want to check that video and find out more of why BMWs are just so cheap. I really hope to see you on the next one. Catch you real soon. Bye-bye.